Hello everyone. So, before we get into Knut Hamsun's Hunger from 1890, just a quick thing. This book I read in 2018. Now, it's interesting to me because I think since the conception of this channel, I have tried to, I've aimed to give as much concrete detail as possible in terms of sort of nature of the characters and plot points and whatnot for various books. And that obviously that works when I've just finished a book, but because sometimes I like to tackle books that I've read a while ago, for example Frankenstein in 2017, that really, although it's one of my favourite books, it's quite an effort to go back and remember all the details and stuff. So something I've realised is that I can't actually just, there's nothing obviously stopping me from just talking about the essence of the book, and because I know I enjoyed it at the time, um, I know that I can just say it's highly worthwhile to read, for example, Knut Hamsun's Hunger. Um, so I can't quite remember the character details and even some of the names as well, but I'm really going to be talking about the sort of feeling of this book and the sort of essence, I suppose. Because I really can't quite remember the details, unfortunately. It's just so many books and so many years pass, obviously. It's also this kind of completionist mindset where nowadays I actually kind of want to get as many of the books that I've read onto the channel as possible. Just that's sort of just how my brain works. I sort of feel better to have the books that I've read be on the channel and properly reviewed. Now, Knut Hamsun's Hunger from 1890. This book is very much in the vein of Dostoevsky, and it's kind of heralded as the beginnings of modernism, beginnings of the psychological novel. It's very much Dostoevskian. It's got reminiscences of Camus as well. It's not this heroic narrative where there's a clear middle and a beginning, middle, and end, and it feels like your standard sort of 1800s novel. It's very much introspective. It's very much it sort of goes. The character sort of wanders and meanders, and we feel his madness. This book is all about being inside the character's head. This unnamed narrator who is living in Oslo, I believe at the time. In the 19th century, it was Christiania, I think. I think that's what it was called. Um, so this book, for me, is very much. I put it in the same category as Dostoevsky and all those introspective novels that came out of that. I think Hamsun is actually the pioneer of this category of fiction. Um, Hamsun himself is quite an interesting character from what I remember. He controversial as well. He I believe he was a Nazi sympathiser, unfortunately, and it's kind of a 50-50 situation in Norway, really, because they love his work. I mean, I've read Hunger, but I've also read it's blank. I'm blanking on the name now. It's I'll have to come. I might put it in there. I might put it in the little text at the bottom. I can't remember. It's one of his more famous works. It's not Growth in Soil. It's something else. It's unfortunate I can't remember what the name is. Anyway, I've read two of his works, and they're quite good. So this is a very simple work in the sense that all we're dealing with it's very much a novel of art and sort of passionate striving. It's really that sort of, it's the hunger artist. It's the lonely figure who can't sort of find his way in life, who can't he just wants to tell a story, really. He's a writer, and he's living in this apartment, and he's hunger sort of racks his body and spirit, his mind and soul. He has this interesting code of chivalry. I find, if I remember correctly, he has this interesting code of chivalry where he's got such pride in him that he'll even turn down food. He only needs to sell the story first before he can get the money to then buy the food, I believe. This novel is there's a passage at the end that really sticks out for me, and I'll read that eventually. But for me, it feels like it's sort of like the progenitor of all psychological fiction. It's got this very rustic quality. I mean, it's a he's a writer, sort of intellectual, but the way Hamsun writes this novel, especially with some of the natural details, with leaves falling and the sort of visceral nature of of hunger and that affects his body and his ability to write and function in normal society. It's very much it has this romantic sense as well. For me, I imagine it as it's 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 standing on the shoulders of romanticism to then leap forward into sort of modernism, if that makes any sense. That's how I think of it anyway. It feels like it's on the border, sort of the threshold of that. Um, and it's for me actually, it's kind of inspired some of my stories as well. I wrote it's part of my sort of large world building project that I've been doing for 5 years or 4 years now. Um, and I wrote a story very much with Hamsun's hunger in mind. So I'll just read a little passage here. It's from a review. It's a blogspot. It's a blog, and I'm not sure if the guy's English, but I'll just read this out. It's decent English, I suppose. At times, this novel reminded me of Dostoevsky's Notes from the Underground, with our hero here showing generosity in the face of all the doom, giving away his last possessions, his shaving vouchers, proclaiming to give the policeman 5 kroner if he had anything. His descent into delirium from hunger includes chewing on wood shavings, castigating himself for his selfishness and needing money for food, assuming lofty characters to restore some dignity, which ends up with him not getting a meal voucher. This is a bleak portrait of a writer in despair. There are also numerous references to decline, decay, and actually this leads on to one of my favourite excerpts. This is the thing that I remember from this book, and it's fantastic. I should say there's also elements of the stream of consciousness in this novel as well. That technique is employed. A swarm of loose thoughts is fluttering about in my head. The mood of the dying day makes me despondent and sentimental. Fall has arrived, and has already begun to put everything into a deep sleep. Flies and other insects have suffered their first setback, and up in the trees and down on the ground you can hear the sounds of struggling life, puttering, ceaselessly rustling, labouring not to perish. All crawling things are stirring once more. They stick their yellow heads out of the moss, lift their legs and grope their way with their long feelers, before they suddenly give out, rolling over and turning up their bellies. Every growing thing has received its distinctive make. A gentle, I think that's supposed to say mark, unfortunately. A gentle breath of the first frost. The grass stems, stiff and pale, strain upward toward the sun, and the fallen leaves rustle along the ground with a sound like that of wandering silkworms. It's fall, the very carnival of transience. The roses have an inflamed flush, their blood-red colour tinged with a wonderfully hectic hue. That's actually one of my favourite parts. Actually, it's one of my favourite lines or quotes in fiction. It's fall, the very carnival of transience. I remember that one quite well. And actually it sort of fits the background as well. So this is very much a very sort of visceral novel, even though we're just dealing with a sort of intellectual writer who's just wandering the streets of Oslo or Christiania. It's very much, you can probably tell by that excerpt. So I'll just read here, there's an interesting leitmotif here that Hamsun was trying to employ in Hamsun. So his insistence that the intricacies of the human mind ought to be the main object of modern literature. So that's what Hamsun was writing about and writing for. Hamsun's own literary programme is to describe the whisper of the blood and the pleading of the bone marrow. This is thoroughly manifest in hunger. Really, I mean, you can just tell. I mean, for example, again, I've just got a couple of quotes here. In many ways, the protagonist of the novel displays traits reminiscent of Raskolnikov in Crime and Punishment. The author, Fyodor Dostoevsky, being one of Hamsun's main influences. The influence of naturalist authors such as Emile Zola is apparent in the novel, as is his rejection of the realist tradition. So it is of that ilk, definitely. And I think on that point, I think as a historical sort of document, I think you should read it. But it's much more than that, of course. It's wonderfully sort of poetic and dark and serious. It's really quite quite a short novel as well. I think it's only about 230 pages, but it's one of those sort of seminal works of literature. So I hope you enjoyed that. It's good to get another book reviewed. I'm not sure what I'll do next. I think I'm going to Rome in on the 5th of November to the 9th. So I think I'll do maybe a vlog before then, and I might finally review the masterful Mervyn Peake's Boy in Darkness. So that was Old Onward Books. Thanks for watching. Cheers.